Hi everyone, Paul here with An Ear from Men. By request, today I'm going to talk about man caves. And of course, hopefully in the process, we can shine a light on a bigger lesson in one way or another. To start with, let me point out that at least one element of the very idea of a man cave is a bit of a misnomer. The fact is that if you are inside somewhere, with a floor under your feet and a roof over your head, including those of you who are driving around in a car listening to this on an MP3, you are in man-made territory. After all, the design, construction, technology, labor, transportation, and everything else that went into anything you have that separates you from freezing cold, scorching heat, high winds, bugs, and disease was brought to you almost exclusively by men. Or, as noted feminist dissenter Camille Paglia once said, if civilization had been left in female hands, we would still be living in grass huts. I'm guessing that pretty much leaves out 88-inch 4K TVs with 5.1 surround, PlayStations, Blu-ray players, and speakers the size of smartphones that would blow windows out if men hadn't invented tempered glass. The point about all this is just to say that man caves, like everything on the planet without a dirt floor in the sky for a roof, is pretty much the province of men, even the large swaths of it created for the benefit of women and children. The only real question here is what the man cave actually represents. If you're a blue pill married man or cohabitating, it may represent a retreat and a bit of a status symbol. For some guys, their man cave is in a garage or basement, a place where they can tinker with things, work on cars, or any number of other things where they can put their hands to creative use. For others, it's about comfort and entertainment, a place where they and their male friends can get together with a minimum of female intrusion, watch football, play pool, poker, or just throw back some beers and chew the fat for a while. To be honest with you, it makes sense to me. A guy that works to take care of a family understandably wants a space that feels like it's his. And you'd have to be pretty cold to find fault in a man that considers most of the family home as family space. Still, there's something about this line of thinking that is nagging at me a little. So, I went looking for some other perspective on man caves and found some interesting, if I'm going to be polite, insights about them, and even the possible problems they represent. The most cringeworthy thing I found wasn't from some feminist blogger railing about male privilege. It was from a pretty popular Christian website, powertochange.com, and the article, titled The 5 Dangers Lurking Within Your Man Cave, was written by someone named M. Jansen, who railed about male privilege with all the brio of any Tumblr feminist. As is revealed in the comments to his piece, his first name is actually Michael. I don't know why he goes by M, but I can tell you that if my mind worked like his, I'd hide my name in a closet with a blow-up sheep doll and a stack of bestiality porn just to be less embarrassed. However useless M may be as a thinker, he does provide a great way to examine the man cave issue once we dissect what he has to say and look at what it really means. He starts with what, for some reason, he imagines are the good things about man caves. At this point, though, you already know there's a butt coming that is big enough to make Nicki Minaj's ass look anorexic. He or his editors also added in a feature image to help you get a hint about their real feelings about man caves and about men in general. Anyway, let's start with what M has to say about man caves on the positive side. It's a place to de-stress so we can re-emerge into the world invigorated. Okay, well, there may be some truth to that unless you force yourself to examine the question of why he has to wall himself away from the rest of his home to de-stress. Shouldn't that area of relief start, I don't know, at his front door? I know that's the case for single men, and I know more than a few attached men who walk into their homes instead of crawling in on all fours. Let's move on. Number 2 on the list of M. It's a workshop of creativity where all manner of man crafts are forged. Exercising creativity routinely can lead to ingenuity and better problem-solving skills on the job. Now, here's something I can live with. For guys working with their hands, a space for that without doilies, stuffed animals, or cheap sofa art depicting little girls in flowered dresses frolicking with puppies is a great idea. In fact, I'll even pass on critiquing him on how such a space may make him a better worker and provider for his wife. Next item up on the agenda. It's a safe place for men to be themselves without the manners and pleasantries expected of them around women. And, well, so is any space for a man who does not change personalities because there's a woman in the room. The insulting implication here, of course, is that outside the presence of women, men are ill-mannered, unpleasant boors who only manage to straighten up and fly right when their female betters are around. Next, it's a place to experience temporary independence. Having unstructured me time empowers men to more easily accept the interdependency of married life. With this kind of diplomacy, M could be the official male ambassador to Vaginistan. What he has said, with condescension that is more and more thinly veiled as he goes along, is that men are children that need the occasional foray away from mommy's control. Limited, unstructured me time is something you give to a fucking preteen before you bring them back into the realm of parental control. It is not something you issue out like a hall pass to a grown man. The last part of what he said, the part about interdependency, made me want to vomit on his shoes. Look, M, men don't need to be empowered to accept interdependency with women. Their problem in most cases is that there is no real interdependency there to accept. In fact, what passes for interdependency these days, which much more accurately resembles unreciprocated male utility, is one of the biggest jokes of modern times. And I have to say, it does not surprise me to see a man waxing idiotic about it on a Christian website. Gyneolatry, yes, it's a real word, has replaced the Christianity practiced by M and most of Christian culture. I know, not all Christians are like that. I know some Christian men just as sick of hearing this shit as I am, and it is at least part of why they no longer attend church. They are tired of hearing how Jesus wants you to become a pussy, and I don't blame them. Whatever their reasons, men are gravitating toward building a place in their homes that they can call home. That is both ironic and pathetic, but more on that in just a bit. Let's finish with M's ersatz positives with number 5. It's a place for males to bond. Many men have few close friends, but inviting guys over to their cave can help remedy that. Well, so will inviting them into their living room, or leaving home to go visit them elsewhere, or 12 hours in a bass boat, or lunch at Hooters. I don't have any other comment or interest, for that matter, on what M thinks about men and bonding, except to say that if you have the poor fortune to bond with a guy like M, make sure to have some acetone with you. And now, that leaves me free to get to the part of his article that he really wanted to write. The evil dangers of man caves and how they may induce men to the dangerous notion of independence and their own space in life. I'll read you his little introduction. It gives you such a clear picture. 5 dangers to look out for and how to combat them. But the untold truth about man caves, says M, with roughly the same alacrity of a gender studies professor, is that they can easily turn from a blessing into a curse. If us guys aren't careful, these dangers may actually enslave us to our caves. Sorry, I have to stop here. The motherfucker is actually cautioning men about the dangers of cave addiction. He's worried that we'll get strung out on privacy and nag-free zones. This is where M's article goes from being misguided to patently stupid and stays that way to the bitter, zealous end. Moving spastically forward, M says, and I quote, "We may end up loving our caves more than our wives and children and hurting them as a result. We must educate ourselves about the dangers that exist and put safeguards into place." Now, before I list the dangers and what M calls safeguards, seemingly with a straight face, a few precautions are in order. Please be seated while you hear this stuff. Don't attempt to swallow liquid or food, and if you are driving, please pull over. If there are blunt instruments within reach, please secure them away to prevent self-harm. With that, we go on. Danger number one, says M, is a sense of entitlement. Like I said, straight out of Gender Studies 101. Men can easily believe that they are owed inordinate amounts of time in their man cave, he says. If a man does not check with the missus about how much time in the cave is reasonable, he tends to err on the side of extravagance for himself and negligence of his family. This will cause his loved ones to feel unloved and undervalued. His recommended safeguard is simple. Check with the wife. Why do I do this? Okay. I'm going to finish this thing, goddammit. Now, let's get this over with. M for fucking moron continues. A married man shouldn't act as if how he spends his time is totally up to him, he admonishes. It is perfectly acceptable for him to touch base with his wife before embarking on a man venture. To make this easier to accept, let's call it seeking cooperation rather than asking permission. Well, of course he wants to phrase it that way. And while we're at it, let's call an average white dude a cisgendered, heteronormative European American who identifies as male. For that matter, let's put wheels on my dog and call him a fucking Lamborghini. God help me, let's go on. Oh, and I don't mean M's God. At this point, even as a skeptic, I'm starting to wish there was a real God and that he would kick M's God in his tiny balls. As a team, a husband and wife can work out how much time in the man cave is reasonable, he says, as though there's a pull string in the back of his neck. A man can mistakenly assume his wife is out to deprive him of downtime, when in reality, she simply wants to ensure that herself, the family, and household responsibilities are attended to in a fair way. Make of that bullshit whatever you will. I'm getting exhausted here. Let's move on. Danger number 2, obsession. Okay, so we're back to being a cave slave. Men are passionate beings, he opines. Once they take on a new hobby or interest, they often become fixated on it. Tunnel vision can set in, causing them to lose all track of time. When this occurs, nothing seems to matter to them except the project at hand. Interruptions can make them annoyed and irritable. This may cause the wife and children to feel second place in the home. So if you're wondering why you haven't been invited to your daughter's weekend tea party, maybe she's feeling rejected. Okay. M's suggested safeguard against this is, again, just like his mind, very simple. keep track of time. Every man should, excuse me, every man cave should come fully equipped with a functioning stopwatch and or clock, he says, reminding men at once that they are both stupid and need to be on a leash. Some men, he continues, are able to watch a clock successfully, but other men with a more addictive personality will need the help of a stopwatch or alarm clock. It's a bad idea to depend on the wife to keep track of the time. When she has to come down the stairs announcing time is up, this keeps the man from being responsible about his time, and she will feel forced to play the part of the nag. Look, before I allow this guy to turn me into an alcoholic, I need to remember the source of the information. This is straight up gynocentric blue pill spinelessness. This guy can't imagine not being a lapdog to his wife, so he can't imagine other men not doing the same. In fact, he has so internalized his weakness and obsequiousness with women that he has conflated it with his religion. In M's mind, Jesus sees men as errant little boys and wives like irate librarians. He can't imagine a woman who might love the fact that he has a man cave and who would want him to spend all the time he wants in there because she too has interests in her own life that don't involve him. He can't imagine a man with a family who has the audacity to think that after a 50-hour work week, several hours commuting, earning the bacon that keeps his wife and children fed and protected, that he might just think he will decide how much time he wants to himself, or that he could either have a partner who gets that, or just as importantly, he could be able to tell her that even if she doesn't like it, she's going to have to get used to it. And he can't imagine women who are mature or self-sufficient enough that they don't live in a state of neediness so dire that they would prohibit some time that he needs where the world does not revolve around her. I have known many men in my life and many men in this men's movement. Many of those men are single, and a lot of them are married with families. I never met a single one who needed a stopwatch to remind him that he has a family. And I have met more than a few men, too many actually, whose wives needed a very cold reminder that their husbands had needs too, needs that they don't need Ask Mommy's permission to pursue. Are there idiots out there like M is purporting to lecture to? Sure, there's some, I guess. But let me let you in on a little secret. If a man is going to neglect his family, it is not going to be because of a fucking man cave. You have to be incredibly stupid to even imagine such a thing. Let's continue. Danger number 3, avoidance of conflict. Man caves tend to become places of retreat from marital conflict, says M. Temporarily cooling off in the man cave is advisable, but stonewalling there for hours to avoid or deny marital problems will exponentially thicken the tension in the home. In doing so, a man's cave becomes a threat to his marriage, and he is unable to enjoy his time there due to his troubled conscience. Safeguard? Look in the mirror, then apologize. You're almost done, Paul. You're almost done. Sorry about that, folks. Anyway, now we get down to the bones of it, and I dare say to a rather revealing peek into the life of M. Maybe the M really is for moron, or maybe it's just for miserable. Whatever name would suit him better, it is clear that his solution to each and every marital conflict is that he has to apologize to his wife. Notice the absolute assumption of guilt written into every word he said. I could not help but notice that he advised the man to look in the mirror, followed immediately by an apology. What is lacking, horribly and agonizingly lacking, is any reference to what a man sees when he looks in the mirror. It is always advisable in any of life's conflicts to self-assess, to look for whether you made mistakes. That's just basic human accountability. But M's world is not a world of accountability. It is a world of maintaining peace with a woman no matter how dishonest or cowardly you are in the approach. What you see in the mirror doesn't matter. That's a goddamn shame when it is you that you're looking at. Or, as this pathetic man goes on to conclude, in this case, the man should still feel free to enter his cave, but not for the purpose of entertainment. Rather, he should utilize this private space for some much-needed self-appraisal. When he uncovers his role in creating the conflict, he must exit the cave, apologize to his wife, and communicate with her as long as she desires. Forgiveness will dissolve the tension between them. If the problem seems beyond their ability to fix, they should seek resources together." Unquote. It is hard to imagine how they would ever need to seek outside resources. He's wrong every time. All he has to do is beg and scrape for forgiveness long enough, and all will be well. Danger number 4, erosion of intimacy. I am almost tempted to skip this part. Refuting what he has to say here point by point is, well, pointless. There is no intimacy with phony people, and M is phonier than a Hillary Clinton email story. Men who absorb all blame regardless of the facts and beg like dogs for a pat on the head are incapable of anything resembling intimacy. So are the women who expect such treatment. Intimacy, the real kind, is born of blood and conflict. It comes from two people with boundaries and self-respect, people who won't take shit and who learn the valuable lesson of not dishing it out so much. Intimacy comes from two individuals who learn to coexist without throwing their individuality or each other under the bus. Perhaps that's why so few people ever get there. Intimacy is the last thing that M should be talking about. Matter of fact, M should just shut up altogether about pretty much everything. But I've given you everything else he said, word for word. I won't stop the courtesy now. Men may forget about intimacy when absorbed in manland, he says, unable to find manland on a map and oblivious to the emotional depth of men. Wives love to catch up about the day and share what's on their heart, and they often like physical touch before falling asleep, which I'm sure you notice doesn't always mean sex. If a man stays in his cave for too long, he may miss this window of opportunity because his wife will become too tired. If he emerges at a late hour expecting immediate sexual privileges, there goes that word again, he will be sorely disappointed. Before too long, their marital intimacy will have eroded away severely, and she will feel undesired. His safeguard? Exit 30 minutes before she sleeps. I'm assuming he's talking about the fucking man cave there. I think he forgot about the timer that's supposed to be running, but I will give him a pass. The man is obviously challenged. Couples who go to bed together tend to stay together, he claims, with no reference. Therefore, a man should prioritize at least 30 minutes each evening to communicate with his wife and engage in what females call cuddling. Well, I think men pretty much call it the same thing. But anyway, this creates a sense of teamwork, he thinks, assumedly referring to cuddling. She will feel pursued and nourished by this intimacy. The added benefit is that sexual activity will increase greatly. They will both feel more satisfied and secure in their relationship. He almost has a cogent idea there, but at this point, I'm beyond caring. But don't you worry, Em. I am sure your wife feels pursued quite a bit. And I'm glad to hear you found a technique that will get her to give up the pussy a little more often. Finally, danger number 5, the presence of other women. The greatest threat in any man cave, Em says, laughably, is encountering other women sexually. Em, I'm pretty sure that most men don't fuck other women in their man caves, what with the wives being in the house at the same time and all. But just for grins, let me suggest that your willingness to cheat on your wife might play a bigger role in the danger department than whether you have a room in your house dedicated to what men like to call me time. I'm just kidding. Em wasn't really talking about real women. He was talking about porn, which, as we all know, is only available in man caves. Em gives us the rundown. Most men are smart enough not to meet secretly with a flesh and blood woman, he says, as though it is intelligence, not values, that keep men from cheating. But many are fooled by the allure of the virtual woman. We've all seen her around. I bet you have, Em, on more than one occasion. She comes in the form of sexually explicit digital images accessible on TV, the internet, or on the video game console. Some men invite her over habitually. Those in self-denial say she's harmless, but the proof she's very dangerous is out there. The threat couldn't be more real, and her name is porn. We must take responsibility and eradicate her from our caves quickly. She can ruin our marriages and lead us to betray our wives. His suggested safeguard for this? Set boundaries. Well, 1, Em, what the fuck do you know about boundaries? And 2, set them with whom? That girl named Porn? Sorry, Em, but you are projecting more than a home theater system. I'm not going to even get into the porn debate here, including the vibrator and shop-worn copy of 50 Shades of Grey that's in your wife's bedside table. This whole god-awful mess reads like some henpecked idiot who wants and probably needs a man cave in the worst possible way. So he wrote something he could show his wife so that she would see what a good boy he would be and allow him to have one. Now, I know when the request was put in for me to do a video on man caves that what the requester likely had in mind was not a review about an article written by some simpering trained seal pretending to lecture men on the evils of having some square feet they could call their own. But frankly, my opinion on man caves wouldn't make more than a 2-minute video. My idea is simple. Man caves are great for some men. But I don't think that anyone should fool themselves. The overarching thing behind a man cave is that it is an affirmation that the rest of the home is something he needs to escape from and something that he does not own. It is a domain for others that he simply has the pleasure of paying for. It is the proof that a man's home is her castle, not his. From wall to wall, room to room, he's a visitor. Perhaps a welcome one, perhaps an appreciated one, but a visitor nonetheless. It is her domain. Men dream of and build man caves because they want and need something, anything they call their own. Personally, I don't think that'll work for a lot of men. Too many of them will end up like Em, being allowed to enter on a leash with a stopwatch ticking in their ears and paying the price the moment they get uppity and start to act like they have a right to be there. Even shitheads like Em will treat those guys like they're being entitled. My advice? Own the space between your ears. Own your balls and own your spine. If you do that, you have the things and the space you want. If you have a woman who takes issue with that, you have the wrong woman. If you allow a woman to have an issue with that, you're the wrong man. If creating a space in your home that you call your man cave is something that works for you, by all means go for it. Just know why you're doing it. Know whether you are creating your own space or creating what every idiot in academia would call safe space. And if you're creating the latter, your one solace is that it's much cheaper. When your decor consists of peanut butter sandwiches, puppy videos, and warm fuzzy blankets, it saves a ton of money from that 4K TV and a kegerator. Like everything else in life, all the important stuff happens inside and in the mirror. Unless, of course, you look in the mirror and you see M staring back at you. And that is it for another Talk from an Ear for Men. As always, I hope you've enjoyed, even if you haven't, and see you next time.